Welcome back to the New News with your host Olivia Jane, where we discuss what the hell is going on around the world and how it affects the average person like you and me. This week, Sweden began distributing a new pamphlet entitled If Crisis or War Comes to millions of households, reflecting the country's heightened security concerns amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, which saw a series of significant developments that highlight the escalating tensions and the increasing complexity of international involvement. Ukraine launched its first strike using US-supplied long-range missiles, targeting Russian position in the Bryansk region. This marked a major shift in military strategy, enabled by the US lifting restrictions on Ukraine's use of these advanced weapons. In response, Russian President Vladimir Putin approved an updated nuclear doctrine that lowers the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons, further intensifying global concerns. The conflict took an unexpected turn with reports of North Korea sending thousands of troops to support Russia's efforts in the Kursk region. This direct involvement by Pyongyang adds a new layer to the war, prompting the US to adjust its policies. President Joe Biden authorized Ukraine to use American long-range missiles for deep strikes within Russia, signaling a firmer stance against Russian aggression and aiming to deter further North Korean support. These actions come as concerns grow over diminished US support, particularly following Donald Trump's re-election, which could shift America's stance on the conflict. But will Mr. Trump want to back down now that Biden has stepped up? Despite the challenges, Ukraine continues to demonstrate resilience and adaptability in the face of mounting pressure and as Europe enters a tough winter. No surprise to anyone, the UK government has once again demonstrated its ability to cultivate discontent, this time targeting the backbone of rural Britain with a 2026 inheritance tax policy on farmers that feels more like a raid than a reform. Under the guise of fairness and modernisation, the policy betrays a profound ignorance of farming realities and threatens to uproot the future of countless family-run farms and food production.
I'm here to support the farmers. It's that simple. So they need all the help they can get, really.
But you oppose what the government's proposing?
Oh God, yes. As I've said in the past, if she'd have wanted to take out the likes of James Dyson and investment bankers and so on, she would have used a sniper's rifle. But she's used a blunderbuss and she's hit all this lot. It was, as I understand it, it was a very rushed last-minute decision. And I think, we all make mistakes in life, and I think it's time for them to say, you know what, we've cocked this one up a bit and back down. That's my view.
Inheritance tax, in its original intent, is supposed to address wealth inequality by redistributing unearned riches. However, applying it to farmland, a product asset passed down through generations, is a tone-deaf move that misunderstands the difference between liquid assets and working capital. Farmers aren't sitting on cash or luxury assets, they are stewards of the land, their wealth locked in fields, livestock and machinery, not in offshore bank accounts or hedge fund portfolios. The 2026 tax effectively punishes families who have dedicated their lives to producing the food that sustains this great nation. Instead of recognizing the intergenerational nature of farming, the policy treats landowners as though they are oligarchs hoarding wealth, ignoring that the land's value is tied to its use, not to speculative gains. Could the government simply be planning a huge cheap land grab for their friends once farmers, who will never be able to pay the taxes, have to sell to developers and give up farming entirely, stripping rural communities of their identity and paving the way for an agriculture sector to be dominated by profit-driven conglomerates? This policy exposes the growing chasm between rural and urban Britain. It's a betrayal of centuries-old social contracts. Farmers feed the nation, and in return, the nation supports their ability to farm. Instead, the 2026 inheritance tax on farmers signals that the government is yet again exposed as a spineless bunch of dunderheads full of manure. It's hard to imagine this tax coming from anywhere other than the air-conditioned boardrooms of Westminster, where policymakers likely view farmland as a line item rather than a lifeline. Do they understand that most farmers are already grappling with razor-thin profit margins, volatile commodity prices, and mounting environmental regulations? Adding an inheritance tax to the mix is like placing a millstone around their necks and expecting them to swim. Which brings us nicely into our next homegrown disaster. The British government's latest initiative to encourage natural swimming is an irony-laden spectacle that would be laughable if it weren't so insulting. Promoting wild swimming in rivers and lakes while water companies relentlessly pollute those same bodies of water with untreated sewage and chemical runoff. The systemic greed of water companies that treat the nation's waterways as dumping grounds, brazenly polluting the environment while handing billions in dividends to investors, and happily paying fines whilst laughing all the way to the bank. Let's not forget that these water companies are regulated. Or they're supposed to be. In practice, the fines for discharges of untreated sewage and other pollutants are mere slaps on the wrist, easily absorbed by their huge profits. And while water companies rake in billions, the rivers and seas suffer, and so do the people who dare to swim in them.
United Utilities supply more than 3 million homes across the northwest. It's also responsible for treating sewage. Too much of it is ending up in Lake Windermere, according to those taking part in today's demonstration.
You saw how many people were out here today, and all these campaigns are as a result of concerned individuals getting the ball rolling. You know, we're Johnny-come-latelys.
This pipe here, when it's discharging, is going into our most culturally significant body of water in the country.
Not just culturally significant, it's England's largest lake at more than 10 miles long. Last summer, the north half turned bright green. Look carefully and you can see a child swimming in it. It was caused by a blue-green algae.
It's obviously a major concern. We spend a lot of time here canoeing and kayaking and stuff like that, swimming. And you want to be somewhere that's clean and that you know is going to be safe for your children.
Until water companies are held to account, this initiative is little more than a hollow PR exercise. Real action, like stricter regulations, meaningful fines, and commitment to reinvesting profits into environmental protections, is necessary to make natural swimming a safe and viable option. The government's initiative is a metaphor for its broader environmental policies. Surface-level gestures overshadowed by a willingness to let corporations do whatever they want for a bag of cash. Governments everywhere need to start prioritising the nations they are meant to be guarding, or are politicians too scared to make the big decisions surrounding industry, rather focusing on tax and the rich versus the poor? Keep them arguing and the big industries can do what it likes. If an investment firm is offering hundreds of millions to buy a government's asset, it's not out of charity or a desire to break even. They're doing it to turn a profit, and a significant one at that. That's the nature of their business. While it's understandable, it raises a fundamental question. Why should government entrusted with the public services relinquish control of key assets to private entities motivated purely by financial gain? Governments have the unique ability to balance profitability with public benefit. They should be strong and invest in infrastructure, improve services, and adjust pricing to reflect societal needs, all while maintaining ownership and control. Instead of being completely weak and offloading assets to private firms who then raise the prices, cut the costs, and focus on squeezing profits at the expense of service quality. Decades of underinvestment have left parts of the water system in need of urgent upgrades, limiting its potential. The UK's water system is a vital and underleveraged natural resource. If managed effectively, focusing on sustainability, investment in infrastructure, and public ownership or strict regulation, it could become a model for balancing economic utility with environmental stewardship. Government should recognise water as not just a basic necessity, but a strategic asset, critical for future resilience and prosperity. Right now, on the other side of the world, huge protests are sweeping across New Zealand as Maori communities fight back against a new government plan to change how the Treaty of Waitangi is interpreted. This treaty, signed in 1840, is supposed to protect Maori rights, but the new Treaty Principles Bill is stirring up outrage because it seems to rewrite the rules in a way that could weaken those protections. Thousands of people, including both Maori and non-Maori supporters, are marching from the northern tip of the country all the way to Parliament in Wellington. This isn't just a small gathering, it's a full-blown hikoi, a protest march, with chants, haka performances, and some seriously powerful signs. The goal? To tell the government to stop messing with the Maori rights. The government, led by Prime Minister Christopher Luxon and pushed by the ACT Party, says the bill will clarify things, but many Maori see it as yet another slap in the face, stripping away their sovereignty and ignoring their history. For Maori leaders, this is about more than just laws. It's about respect, fairness, and keeping promises made nearly 2 centuries ago. The final showdown is set to happen at Parliament, where thousands are expected to make their voices heard. It's shaping up to be a historic moment for New Zealand, and one thing's clear: Maori aren't backing down anytime soon. The Met Office has issued stern warnings of up to 20 centimetres of snow across parts of the UK in the coming days. But seasoned Brits are already questioning if this will be another classic case of snow drama, no snow. Northern Scotland might see a respectable flurry by Monday morning, while the East Midlands, Yorkshire, Wales and Northern England are bracing for a supposed snowfall extravaganza overnight on Monday into Tuesday. But let's be honest, will it really materialise? Or are we looking at a light dusting that dissolves before you've had your morning coffee? Yellow warnings for ice, power cuts and transportation chaos are in place, but most are more concerned about yet another overzealous forecast ruining their plans for absolutely nothing. Stay tuned as we track every flake with a mix of dread and disbelief. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of New News with your host Olivia Jane. Make sure to interact with the video as much as you can and follow us on socials, and I'll see you next week. Bye!